Hi everyone, here is our group presentation from Group E. We have 5 members in our group. We will answer the 5 questions from 5 parts. Now is the first part. It's a globalization impact and legal challenges in Norway. The globalization has brought national markets and productions activity closer together, and this has influenced Norway's policies and economic development. The globalization of markets has pushed Norway to export more oil and seafood. The globalization of productions has led Norway to develop high technology and green energies, and the government has supported innovation and environment protections. This change has made Norway more open to the foreign companies, but also subject to strict rules and requirements, such as environment standards and social responsibilities. The political economics refers to the combination of the country's policies and economic systems. The economic globalization has contributed to the liberalizations of the Norway's market, particularly in the areas of the energy, the technology, and shipping, which has affected significant foreign investments. At the same time, since Norway has strengthened the regulation of foreign companies to ensure that they comply with high standards of environmental and social responsibility requirements. As a Cato from 2007 points out, the globalization has led Norway to become more open and transportation in its policies, while setting strict standards to protect its interests. Now let's compare the Norway and Australia. The Norway's legal system is civil law, which is based on the status law, with process being informative and but not binding. The Australia is common law, which is based on the case law with binding court decisions and the emphasis on precedent. The Norway's cultural value is individualism. As Hartford's high index is 81, emphasizing individual freedom and self-actualization, while Australia is in the index of the 73, emphasizing individual achievement and independence. The economic system of both Norway and Australia are mixed economics. They are both combine marketing mechanic with government innovations, with government regulation and intervention in certain areas. Now it's our group member to introduce the second part from Shilu.
Hello everyone, today I will share with you the important topic, how we should analyze a country's level of economic development and human development, and which indicators are more important for Australia company. We will use Norway as an example to compare and analyze through 3 key indicators, GNI, PPP, and HDI. First, let's look at GNI, gross national income. GNI equal to GDP plus net income from abroad. This indicator reflects the income level of the country's population as a whole, and is suitable for measuring the overall strength of a country's economies. PPP, purchasing power parity, on the other hand, focus on the more comparison of living standard and real economic power. It measures the purchasing power of currency in different countries based on the price and same goods and service, which better reflects the real quality of life of population. Finally, there is the HDI, Human Development Index, which combines health, education, and income level to produce more humanistic measure of country's level of development. The HDI is not just economic statistic, but measure the human well-being. And analyzing the strengths and weakness of the indicators, GNI has the advantage of tracking countries' economic growth and help government to make policy. However, it differs in people's cost of living and well-being. The PPP is more stable for cross-country comparison and provides the truer picture of standard of living of a country's population. The disadvantage is that it is technically difficult to measure accurately, especially between countries with difficult consumption structures. The HDI provides the indicator from the human perspective. It's important in the international humanistic assistance, education, cooperation, and policy research. However, it does not capture regional disparities or the income inequalities within countries. And for the data comparison of the Norway and Australia, looking at the data from 2023, Norway's GNI is about 568,000 million. It's much lower than Australia's 1.683 billion. However, Norway's PPP ranges 100,000 is much higher than Australia's 70,000. In terms of the human development, Norway is the second in the world after Switzerland with a high HDI of 0.966, indicating a very high level of performance in terms of health, education, and living standards. It means although Norway's total GNI is not high as Australia's, the actual quality of life of its people is higher and its human development is more prospective. And we know that Australia is a country that places high value of legal compliance, sustainability, and ESG with a cooperation culture that flavors individualism and social responsibility. Therefore, when entering a new market is not enough to focus GNI of the total economics. We should be more consider PPP and HDI. PPP tells us spending power of the total population and wherever there is enough market space. HDI stands for the social sustainability, education level, and the quality of talent, all which have direct impact of company's labor cost, the quality of its employees, and the fulfillment of its corporate social responsibility. Especially when faced the country like Norway has a high income, high HDI, and PPP can help us to judge the sustainability and the attractiveness of the market more than GNI. So we should place a greater emphasis on PPP and HDI when doing business in high human development countries. They are directly related to the customer strength, employee qualities, and the stable impact of the organism. And let the next group member to introduce the last question.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex. My part is question 3. Today, I will be analyzing the cultural distance between Norway and Australia using 2 key frameworks: Hofstede's cultural dimensions and Ronen and Schenker's cultural clusters. I will also reflect on whether these 2 countries are becoming more culturally similar or remaining distinct. Let's begin with Hofstede's cultural dimensions, which offer a way to compare national cultures. Across 6 key areas, according to the latest data, Norway and Australia have similar scores in 3 dimensions. Power distance, 31 for Norway and 38 for Australia, showing both cultures value equality and flat hierarchies. Uncertainty avoidance, Norway scores 50, Australia 51. Both have moderate tolerance for ambiguity. Long-term orientation, Norway scores 55 and Australia 56, indicating balanced attitudes toward tradition and future planning. However, we also see major differences. First, in masculinity, Norway scores extremely low at 8, compared to 61 in Australia. This means Norway is a highly female culture, focused on cooperation, modesty, and work-life balance, whereas Australia is more competitive and success-driven. Second, in individualism, Norway actually scores higher at 81, compared to Australia's 73. Both are individualistic societies, but Norwegians place even greater value on personal independence. Though often supported by strong social systems, finally indulgence. Australia scores 71, while Norway scores 55. Australians are more likely to pursue leisure and enjoyment, while Norwegians show more restraint in everyday life. This result shows that although both countries share some cultural similarities, significant differences still exist, especially in their views on gender roles, success, and lifestyle. To support this further, we can turn to Ronan and Shinka's cultural clusters. This theory groups countries with similar cultural patterns. Australia is part of the Anglo cluster, known for high individualism, competition, and a strong emphasis on personal achievement. Norway belongs to the Nordic cluster, which values equality, consensus, and strong social welfare. These cultural clusters are shaped by history, politics, and social norms, and they explain why even countries that appear similar in wealth and language can have very different cultural values. Now the key question: are Norway and Australia becoming more similar or more different over time? Globalization and the internet have certainly brought certain behaviors closer together. People in both countries use the same technology, watch the same media, and often work in similar international business environments. However, these are surface level similarities. The deeper values, like how people define success, how they approach leadership, and how they view social responsibilities, are still quite different. For example, Australia tends to prioritize performance and reward competition. In contrast, Norway's culture is built on fairness, modesty, and collective well-being. In conclusion, using Hofstede's and Ronan Shinka's models, we can see that while some elements of Norwegian and Australian cultures may appear to be converging, the core values remain distinct. The cultural distance between the two countries is still clear, and they are not becoming significantly more similar over time. Thank you.
Hello everyone, here is Chansey Lee, and today I will be addressing question 4 by focusing on Norwegian salmon aquaculture through the lens of absolute advantage. Firstly, there is a comparison between absolute advantage and comparative advantage. Absolute advantage is a theory put forward by Adam Smith. It states that a country, firm, or individual has an edge when it can produce a good in greater quantity at the same or lower cost than others, typically through specialization, which is enabled by technology, skills, or efficiency. Comparative advantage is a theory put forward by David Ricardo, arguing that countries benefit by focusing on what they produce most efficiently and importing what they produce less effectively. This is based on differing cost structures and opportunity costs across nations. Now, let's look at Norway, a perfect example of absolute advantage in salmon aquaculture. Norway is currently the world's largest producer and exporter of Atlantic salmon. In 2021, the country farmed around 837 million salmon, more than half of global production. This level of dominance is supported by three main strengths. First, efficiency. Norwegian salmon farms use just 1.15 kilograms of feed to produce 1 kilogram of salmon. Compare that to the global average, which can range from 6 to even 10 kilograms of feed. That's a massive difference. Second, sustainability. Over 90% of Norwegian salmon farms meet high environmental standards. This is no accident. It's a result of strict regulations and constant monitoring. And third, a holistic farming approach. Norwegian farms implement mandatory fallow periods between production cycles. This allows marine ecosystems to recover and maintain balance, further supporting long-term productivity. Now, let's contrast this with Australian salmon aquaculture, which reflects a comparative advantage. In Australia, Tasmania produces about 90% of the nation's salmon. It's the country's most valuable seafood sector. generating $1.36 billion annually. Export growth, especially to ASEAN countries and the US, has been strong, with export value doubling in 2020. It must be admitted that Australia does hold a comparative advantage in freshness. It is an opportunity cost to attain freshness of salmon in sashimi products served in sushi bars. For instance, Sushi Hub, one of the nation's largest sushi chains, uses only local salmon to guarantee top quality sashimi. This focus on freshness helps Australian salmon compete effectively against imports from countries like Norway. So, how can Norway continue to strengthen its absolute advantage in salmon aquaculture? It lies in evolutionary developments and reconfigurations. Norwegian salmon aquaculture already holds an absolute advantage in global trade. To maintain this, the government must invest in key infrastructures like transport, communication, education, and research, as businesses benefit from these public goods. Due to global uncertainty, including trade tensions initiated by the Trump administration, ongoing innovations through evolutionary development and structural reconfiguration is vital to sustaining this advantage. Let me explain them further. First, evolutionary development. Strategic agility is required. It demands research in multi-discipline and multi-levels, which may be beyond the capacity of the farmers. The government should take the lead in research. Second, structural reconfiguration. For a better economy of scale, aquaculture expansion is needed. However, study shows large aquaculture industry clusters tend to be more negative in expansion. For reconfiguration of the structure, the government should assist the smaller operators for expansion.
Hi, my name is Zhuwei Wu. This is part of question 5. Norway, a firm believer in free trade. Norway established free trade agreements with many European countries through the European Free Trade Association. It enables the Norwegian business to access international markets and facilitates trade with the participating countries. This approach coincides with the theory of gravity model of trade. The theory maintains that trade between two countries is related positively for their similar economic size, whereas negatively related due to the geographical distance. Only recently, Norway is negotiating free trade agreements with China, India, Vietnam, and Moldova because of the geographical remoteness. Note that EFTA does not possess a common trade policy. It maintaining full sovereignty. Each member state agrees on the negotiation parameter period each round of negotiation. The free trade policy also abides to the Heckscher-Ohlin theory. A country exports goods fulfilling the abundant and cheap factor of production and imports those which are scaled domestically. Norway's economy is open and export-oriented. It upholds free trade because it only has a population of 4.5 million, which depends on trade for a high standard of living. The trade policy is to facilitate exports. It is the third largest oil exporter after Saudi Arabia and Russia. Exports of fisheries products is the biggest in Europe. It is a leader in the range of exports including energy, environmental technology, hydropower technology, and communication. Norway imports products to meet the domestic needs such as the machinery, computers, vehicle electrical equipment, and machinery, etc. Low, even no tariff is the instrument used for free trade policy. It is national interest to establish trade operating in the predictable and rule-based framework. Norway advocates to the end fisheries subsidies, which is used by many countries as an instrument. Norway negotiated in WTO for termination as a measure to end excess fishing. It is also a means to protect its competitive advantage for its exports. The 15% tariff raised by the Trump administration in USA would affect business and jobs as exports to the USA constitutes 8% of exports. Attaching to free trade, Norway will negotiate instead of erecting reciprocal tariff. Study shows countries with high value-adding exports will be more resilient to trade war than those dependent on the foreign firms and the processing trade. Subsequently, Norway will not be hit too hard. Its free trade policy can still hold. Both countries and trade partners. In February 2025, Australia exported NOK to 49M and imported NOK to 90M, marking a slight positive trade balance on Australia's side. Both countries follow free trade policy with no or little tariffs in many products. This is our reference list. Finally, we hope that this presentation will give you a deep understanding of the Norwegian trading environment for future market expansion. Thank you.